My wife cheated with her boss, stole $250, $0 from our joint account during our divorce, then secretly married him. Now she's claiming I'm the real thief and wants everything, even the family house worth over $1 million. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be that guy, the one whose life falls apart because of a cheating wife. But here I am, staring at my phone in disbelief, trying to process what I just saw. The thing is, I had an inkling for a while that something was off, but I didn't want to face it. I kept telling myself I was paranoid, that maybe I was imagining things. But then I found the proof clear, undeniable, and devastating. It all started a couple of months ago. My wife, Lisa, had been acting strangely. She'd come home late more often, always with some flimsy excuse about work or catching up with friends. She'd get defensive if I asked questions, brushing it off with a bitchy attitude that I'd never seen before. I noticed she was more secretive with her phone, always keeping it close, hiding messages, deleting calls. Little things that I tried to ignore because I didn't want to believe the worst. But then, one day, I decided to check her phone when she was in the shower. I know, stupid move. But I was desperate for answers. What I found was worse than I could have imagined. There were texts from her boss, Mark, explicit conversations about sex, plans to meet up, and even secret photos. It was obvious they'd been sleeping together for months. The messages were filled with flirtation, lust, and a lot of lies to cover it up. I was stunned. My stomach dropped. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Lisa, my wife, the woman I loved and trusted, was cheating on me with her boss, someone I had always thought of as a decent guy. Mark was a smooth operator, always charming in front of others, but behind closed doors, he was just as manipulative and selfish as Lisa. I couldn't believe I'd been blind to it for so long. How many times had I missed the signs? How many nights had I gone to bed wondering why she was so distant? I kept scrolling through her messages, trying to hold back the rage. The worst part was the way she lied to my face every time I asked her if anything was going on. She'd dismiss my concerns, call me paranoid, say I was imagining things. She'd say she loved me, that I was the only one for her. But then I'd find her texting him, sneaking around. It was like she was living a double life, one where she was the perfect wife, and another where she was cheating, stealing, and lying every chance she got. I decided I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I needed to confront her. That night I waited until she was home and I sat her down. I showed her the messages. Her face drained of color, and she immediately spun some bullshit about how I was overreacting, that Mark was just a friend, that I was jealous and insecure. She threw a fit, calling me crazy, saying I was accusing her of things she hadn't done. She said I was imagining things, that I was paranoid, that I didn't trust her, but I knew the truth. The confrontation turned into a shouting match. Lisa was bitchy, furious that I dared to accuse her of cheating. She insisted she loved me, that Mark was just a boss she had to tolerate, that I was overreacting because I was insecure. She started crying, saying I was ruining her career and her reputation. But I wasn't buying it. I could see the lies in her eyes, and I knew she was hiding something much bigger. What I didn't know then was just how deep this rabbit hole went. I had no idea that her betrayal was only the beginning of a nightmare that would turn my life upside down. I found out later that she had stolen $250,000 from our joint account during the divorce, and somehow she had married Mark secretly. The lies kept piling up, and I was left standing there, feeling betrayed, humiliated, and furious. That's when I realized I had to do something. I couldn't let her get away with this. Not just the cheating, but everything. My mind was racing with plans for revenge, and I knew I couldn't trust her anymore. I had to take control of my life and face whatever was coming. That's where I am now, trying to pick up the pieces, wondering how I ended up here and what my next move should be. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. The betrayal hit me like a freight train. I kept replaying the moments, trying to find a way to make sense of it all. How could Lisa do this? How could she lie so effortlessly? And the money 250, zero gone from our joint account, disappeared right around the time she started sneaking around with Mark. I knew then that her cheating was just the surface of a much deeper mess. I started digging into the bank statements, trying to connect the dots. That's when I found out she'd been siphoning off money for months. She'd transferred large sums into accounts I didn't even know about, probably to hide her tracks. It all made sense now. She'd been planning her escape, her new life with Mark, for a while. I felt sick thinking about how she'd been lying to my face this whole time. I couldn't believe I'd married a woman capable of stealing that much money and betraying me so thoroughly. I also learned she'd filed for divorce, but I was in the dark about the details until I got a hold of some court documents. She was claiming I was the thief, that I'd been embezzling money, and she was demanding everything. Our house, the savings, everything. She'd even gone as far as to marry Mark secretly, which I confirmed through some court records and social media. She was calling herself Mrs. Lisa Mark, pretending she was already married to him while still trying to play the victim in our divorce proceedings. The worst part was how she lied about everything. She told friends and family I was abusive, that I'd been cheating on her, that I was a terrible husband. She painted herself as the victim, even as she was sneaking around, stealing from us, and marrying her boss behind my back. I couldn't believe how manipulative she was. She'd always been bitchy, but this was next level. Her lies were so convincing I almost started questioning myself. Maybe I had missed something. Maybe I was the one at fault. I knew I had to act fast. I could let her get away with this, not without fighting back. I started gathering evidence, screenshots of her texts, bank statements, court documents. I even hired a private investigator to dig into her financials and her relationship with Mark. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. She was living a double life, a complete betrayal not just of me but of everything we'd built together. And now she was trying to turn the tables, making me look like the criminal. One thing I couldn't wrap my head around was how she managed to pull off this entire scheme without me noticing sooner. She'd always been bitchy and manipulative, but I never suspected she was capable of outright theft and deception on this scale. The fact that she married Mark secretly with no regard for the truth or the consequences just made me feel so stupid. I kept asking myself, how did I miss the signs? How did I not see that she was planning this all along? The emotional toll was brutal. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. Every time I thought about her with Mark, I wanted to scream. Every dollar stolen, every lie told, felt like a punch-in. The gut, I'd been so blind, so trusting, believing we had a good life. And now I was left with nothing but a shattered reality and a mountain of debt and betrayal. I knew I had to do something about it, but I wasn't sure what yet. All I knew was that I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything she wanted, especially not our house, which was worth over $1 million. That was my home, my life, and I was going to fight for it. I started talking to lawyers, trying to understand my options. The more I learned, the more I realized how complicated everything was going to be. She had already married Mark, which complicated the divorce. She claimed I was the thief, said I'd stolen money from our joint account, which wasn't true. I was furious, but I also knew I needed to stay calm. I couldn't let her manipulate me further. I had to be smart, strategic, and prepared for whatever was coming next. That's where I am now, trying to piece everything together, planning my next move. I feel like I'm in a war I didn't sign up for, and I don't even know who the enemy is anymore. My wife Lisa is a bitchy, manipulative liar who's willing to destroy everything we built just to get what she wants. And Mark, he's just as guilty. The betrayal runs deep, and I don't know how I'm going to come out of this with any shred of sanity left. But I do know one thing, I'm not giving up without a fight. By the time I had all the evidence laid out, her texts, the bank statements, the court documents, I felt like I was in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Every piece of proof pointed to her betrayal, her theft, her lies. And yet she was still trying to spin it all around, claiming I was the real thief. That woman has a way of twisting everything to suit her narrative, even when the truth is staring her right in the face. I remember the moment I finally confronted her again, face to face. I wanted to hear her lie to my face to see if she could keep up the act. So I called her that afternoon, asking her to come over. When she arrived, she was snippy, bitchy as usual, trying to act like she was the victim. I laid out everything I'd uncovered. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. She refused to admit anything at first, kept insisting I was paranoid, that I was accusing her of stupid stuff. She threw in some classic lines: "You're just jealous. You don't trust me. You're crazy if you think I'd do something like that." But I wasn't buying her bullshit anymore. I told her I had proof that she'd been lying from the start. I told her I knew about the affair with Mark, the money she stole, and the fact that she'd married him secretly. Her face twisted in anger and she started crying, trying to play the victim. "You don't understand, John," she snapped at me. "Mark is the only one who truly cares about me. You've been a terrible husband, always working, never paying attention. I needed someone who actually appreciated me." She looked at me with that bitchy smirk, like she thought she'd won. I felt a surge of rage. How could she be so manipulative? How could she sit there and lie so effortlessly? I told her she was a piece of shit, that I was done trusting her, that I was done pretending everything was fine. I told her I knew about her secret marriage, about her stealing money, and that I was going to fight to get everything back. I was furious, but I also felt heartbreak. I loved her once, and now I was realizing she'd been playing me for a fool all along. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what she'd done, how she'd betrayed everything we had. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and more than anything, angry. I kept asking myself, how did I let it get this far? How did I not see the signs? How could she lie so convincingly? I felt like I'd been sucker punched, and now I was left standing in the wreckage of what I thought was my life. The next morning, I started making some calls. I spoke to a lawyer who specialized in divorce and asset recovery. The legal process was complicated because she'd already married Mark, which meant I was fighting not just for my wife but for the house, the money, and my reputation. She had already hidden a lot of the money, and I knew I'd have to fight to get it back. I also found out she'd been pretending to be single during the divorce proceedings, which made everything even messier. I also hired a private investigator to dig into Mark's background. I wanted to know who I was really dealing with. Turns out, Mark was a smooth talker, a manipulator, and someone with a pretty shady past. I found out he'd been involved in some financial scams before, which explained how he was able to help Lisa with her schemes. It all added up. They were a perfect team, both lying, stealing, and scheming together. I felt a mixture of disgust and determination. I wasn't going to let these two get away with it. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act, trying to gaslight me, calling me crazy for suspecting her. She insisted she was innocent, that I was just jealous of her success with Mark. She told everyone I was an untrustworthy husband, a thief, a bad provider. I'd never felt so betrayed in my life. The woman I'd loved and trusted had turned into a liar and a thief. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt like I was losing my mind. I kept thinking about all the memories, all the plans we made, how she destroyed everything in a matter of months. But I knew I had to keep going. I couldn't let her control the narrative. I had to fight for what was rightfully mine, for the house, for the money, for my reputation. I was starting to see that this wasn't just about infidelity or theft. It was about her complete moral collapse, and I was determined to come out of this with some semblance of justice. I didn't care if she called me crazy or if Mark tried to intimidate me. I was going to expose everything, no matter how much it hurt. There's this feeling you get when your entire world shatters and you realize the person you loved and trusted is capable of such betrayal. It's a mixture of anger, sadness, and a strange sense of clarity. I knew I'd have to fight hard, but I also knew I'd survive this. I had to, because if I didn't, she'd win and I'd be left with nothing. The legal battle was a nightmare. Every day felt like I was fighting against a system designed to favor her. Lisa had already spun her web of lies, claiming I was the thief, that I'd been embezzling money, that I was an unfit husband. She even hired her own lawyer, someone slick and ruthless who kept trying to twist the facts, paint me as the villain. Meanwhile, she kept up her bitchy, manipulative attitude, throwing accusations, crying crocodile tears, acting innocent when in reality she was scheming behind the scenes. The worst part was trying to prove the money she stole. I had the bank statements, the transfers, the hidden accounts, But the court system is slow, and she was doing everything she could to stall to hide her tracks. She claimed I was trying to ruin her reputation, that I was just bitter because she'd moved on with Mark. That woman has a talent for turning everything around, making herself look like the victim. It was infuriating. I was trying to get justice, but it felt like the system was against me. Meanwhile, I kept digging into Mark's background. I paid the private investigator to find out more about him. Turns out, he'd been involved in some shady financial dealings before, and he had a history of manipulating women for money. That explained how Lisa was able to get so deep into her schemes. Mark was her partner in crime. They were a perfect storm, both lying, stealing, and scheming. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how dangerous these people were. I also started secretly recording her. I set up hidden cameras in the house, just in case she tried to do something more drastic. She was bitchy, yes, but she was also cunning. I wanted to catch her in the act if she tried to lie her way out of anything. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore. Every time she snapped at me or tried to gaslight me, I felt a cold fury. I was done being the victim. I had to fight back for myself and for what was rightfully mine. The house, our family home, was the biggest prize. She was claiming I was the thief and that I should be grateful to be left with nothing. She insisted she deserved everything, including the house, which was worth over $1 million. I knew I had to protect it. I hired a lawyer who specialized in property disputes. I had to prove that the money she stole was part of our joint assets, that she had no right to claim the house. It was a brutal fight, and she kept trying to spin it around, saying I was the one trying to steal her happiness, her future with Mark. Throughout all this, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of betrayal. Lisa was the woman I'd married, the woman I'd trusted with my life. And now she was this manipulative, lying bitch who'd stolen from us, lied to everyone, and married her boss behind my back. I kept thinking about all the nights I'd spent working late trying to provide for us, only to find out she'd been planning her escape the entire time. It hurt so much I thought I might break. But I also knew I couldn't give up. Not yet. I had to keep fighting, keep pushing through the legal maze, keep exposing her lies. I started reaching out to friends and family, trying to get support. Some believed her, others saw through her act. The ones who knew me best told me to stay strong, that I deserved better. That's what kept me going, knowing I wasn't crazy, that I was the villain in this story. She was, Mark was, and I was determined to prove it. One day I got a big break. The court ordered an audit of her finances. It was the first time I saw a real chance of recovering the money she stole. I was nervous but hopeful. I knew this was the turning point. I also found out she'd been trying to sell the house secretly, trying to get rid of it so I wouldn't have a claim. That was the last straw. I had to act fast, or she'd wipe everything out before I could get a fair shot. So I filed a motion to freeze the house's assets to prevent her from selling or transferring anything. I also subpoenaed her bank records and phone logs. I was in a fight I couldn't afford to lose. I knew she was cunning and Mark was just as dangerous. But I also knew I had truth on my side. I had proof of her lies, her theft, her deception. And I was finally starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel. The emotional toll was brutal. Every day felt like a hope, anger, despair, then hope again. But I refused to give up. I was determined to get justice, to hold her accountable, and to keep what was mine. Because if I didn't, she'd walk away with everything, the house, the money, and her new life with Mark. And I'd be left with nothing but a broken heart and a shattered trust. I had to fight for what was rightfully mine, no matter how ugly it got. The court proceedings dragged on for months, each hearing more exhausting than the last. Lisa's lawyer fought hard to paint me as the bad guy, claiming I was trying to sabotage her new life, that I was the one stealing money all along. She sat there in her bitchy attitude, smirking whenever she thought she was winning, trying to make me look like a villain. But I had the evidence, the bank statements, the hidden transfers, her own texts that proved she'd been planning this for months. The most frustrating part was how she kept denying everything, even when the proof was staring right at her. She'd lie with a straight face, accuse me of being controlling, accuse me of cheating, even accuse me of stealing. From her, She kept spinning her web of lies, trying to turn everyone against me. Her whole act was so manipulative, so calculated. It was like she had rehearsed every line, every fake tear, every false accusation just to keep herself out of trouble. Meanwhile, I was doing everything I could to stay sane. I'd stay up late at night, poring over documents, cross-referencing bank records, trying to find any loophole, any mistake she might have made. I hired forensic accountants to review her financials, and they uncovered even more hidden accounts and transfers she tried to keep secret. It was like peeling back layers of a rotten onion. Every layer revealed more lies, more theft. Then there was Mark. I finally got a chance to meet him face to face. When I confronted him directly, he played the smooth operator, acting like he was the victim, that Lisa was the one who manipulated him. But I knew better. I had the evidence of their affair, their secret marriage, and their coordinated lies. Mark's background was dirtier than I thought: shady business deals, scams, and a history of conning women. That man was a snake, plain and simple. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind to how deep his influence ran. The house, the big, beautiful family home, was the prize I was fighting hardest for. Lisa kept claiming I was trying to steal her happiness, but I knew the truth. She had already married Mark, already sold herself to him, and now she was trying to take everything from me: our house, our savings, our stability. I hired a property lawyer who proved that she had no right to claim the house, especially since she'd stolen a significant portion of our joint assets. But she was relentless, accusing me of trying to ruin her life, saying I was the real thief all along. Throughout all of this, I felt like I was losing my mind. The betrayal cut so deep. I'd given her everything: my love, my trust, my future, and she'd thrown it all away for Mark, for money, for some twisted idea of happiness. The emotional pain was unbearable. I'd sit alone at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I could have been so naive. How did I not see the signs? How did I not realize she was capable of this level of deception? The turning point came when the court finally ordered a full forensic audit of her finances. That's when I saw the real extent of her theft, more than I could have imagined. She'd hidden millions in offshore accounts, transferred money to fake companies, and even tried to bribe some of her close friends to cover her tracks. It was a massive, orchestrated scheme, and I was just starting to understand how deep the rabbit hole went. With all this evidence, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I knew I could fight her, that I had the truth on my side. I filed for an injunction to freeze her assets, including the house, and to prevent her from selling or transferring anything. I wanted to make sure she couldn't run away with everything before the final court decision. It was a risky move, but I had to protect what was mine. In the middle of all this chaos, I also started reaching out to friends and family, people who knew me, who knew Lisa, and who could see through her lies. Some of them couldn't believe how cold and manipulative she had become. Others warned me to be careful, that she might try to retaliate or escalate her schemes. But I was determined. I refused to let her destroy my life and get away with it. I knew I had the truth, and I was going to fight for what I deserved. Every day felt like a battle. The emotional exhaustion was overwhelming, and the betrayal still haunted me. But I kept reminding myself, this isn't just about money or a house. It's about integrity, justice, and standing up for myself against a woman who had turned into a liar and a thief. I'd been, but I wasn't defeated. Not yet. I'd come too far to give up now, and I was prepared for whatever final blow she threw my way. I just hoped that when it was all over, I'd be able to rebuild what she tried to destroy. After everything, I finally reached the point where the court's decision started to turn in my favor. The forensic audit uncovered the full extent of Lisa's deception: hidden offshore accounts, fake companies, and the money she'd stolen. It was a brutal blow for her, and I could see her confidence wavering. The judge ordered her to return the stolen funds, and the house was put under a lien, ensuring she couldn't sell or transfer it without my approval. It was a small victory, but it felt like a step toward justice. The most surreal moment was when she showed up at the final hearing, trying to play the victim one last time. She looked bitchy, furious, but there was a flicker of fear in her eyes. She couldn't deny the evidence anymore. Her lies had crumbled. She tried to spin some last-minute story about how I'd been controlling and unfaithful, but everyone in the courtroom saw through her act. My lawyer laid out everything, proof of her affair, her theft, her secret marriage, and her manipulations. When the judge finally ruled, it was clear she was going to lose everything she tried to steal. The house was awarded to me, and she was ordered to pay restitution for the stolen money. Her face twisted in anger and disbelief. She screamed that I was the real thief, that I'd been embezzling all along, but the court dismissed her claims. The evidence was too overwhelming. Mark was also implicated in some of the financial crimes, and he was facing his own legal troubles. In the aftermath, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I'd fought hard to reclaim what was mine, my home, my reputation, my dignity. I had lost some of the trust I once had in her, but I gained clarity. I realized I'd been blinded by love, by the idea of a perfect life, and I'd ignored the warning signs. The betrayal had cost me a lot, trust, money, years of my life, but I was still standing. I moved out of the house into a new place and started rebuilding. It wasn't easy. There were nights when I felt broken, questioning everything I'd believed in. But I also learned a lot. I learned that some people are capable of incredible deception, and that you have to be vigilant, especially when it comes to money and trust. I learned that justice can be slow, but it's worth fighting for, even when it feels like the whole world is against you. Looking back, I wish I'd seen the signs sooner. I wish I'd trusted my instincts more. But I also know that I can't change the past. All I can do now is move forward, wiser and more cautious. My advice to anyone in a similar situation is this: don't ignore the red flags. Keep your eyes open, protect your assets, and don't be afraid to fight for what's right. Betrayal cuts deep, but it also teaches you who you really are. And in the end, I'm proud that I stood my ground, that I refused to be broken by her lies. Now I focus on rebuilding my life, better, stronger, and more aware. I may have lost a lot, but I gained a new sense of clarity. Trust is earned, not given, and I'll never let anyone manipulate me that way again. This entire nightmare has shown me the true meaning of resilience. I'm still here, still standing, and I refuse to let her or Mark define me. Because at the end of the day, I know the truth, and that's what matters most.